I do wish I had the energy and enthusiasm that Molly does. I'm just not quite that gifted. So we are in a sermon series entitled We Are. And with this series, we're listening for God's Word as it comes to us, as it's written in the letters to the churches at Galatia, Ephesus, Colossae, and Philippi. So scholars are confident that the Apostle Paul wrote the letters to the churches at Galatia, Colossae, and Philippi, but it is highly debated whether Paul is actually the author of the letter to Ephesians. To be very honest, it doesn't matter to me whether he wrote it or not. The more important point is because it is God's Word. And God's Word is eternal. It transcends time, which means that it is God's Word to the church at Ephesus, as well as God's Word to us today. With that, let us listen for God's Word as it comes to us from the second chapter of Ephesians, beginning at verse 1. You were dead through the trespasses and sins in which you once lived, following the course of this world, following the ruler of the power of the air, the spirit that is now at work among those who are disobedient. All of us once lived among them in the passions of our flesh, following the desires of flesh and senses, and we were by nature children of wrath, like everyone else. But God, who is rich in mercy, out of the great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead through our trespasses, made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved. And raised us up with him and seated us with him in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus, so that in the ages to come he might show the immeasurable riches of his grace in kindness toward us in Christ Jesus. For by grace you have been saved through faith. This is not your own doing. It is the gift of God, not the result of works, so that no one may boast. For we are what he has made us, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand to be our way of life. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, if there is a passage of Scripture that is as powerful and worth remembering as well as we do John 3, 16 and 17, it would be Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8. For it is by grace you have been saved. Because, when we talk about it, when we think about it, grace is so essential. It is so connected. We sing about it, we pray about it, we affirm it, we claim it for ourselves. We talk of grace often, especially as we want to apply it to ourselves. Grace is a foundational understanding of our relationship with God. But what does grace actually mean? Grace is the inexhaustible favor or goodness of God, giving to us what we could not earn, do not deserve, and would never be able to repay. Grace is an unmerited gift. We are saved by grace, and it is important for us to understand what grace is and why we need it so fully. The author of this letter is writing to the Christians in Ephesus. The author thought it imperative for Christians who are saved by grace to understand what it means to be saved by grace. While being saved by grace is a free, unmerited gift, while being saved by grace transforms us to become adopted children of God, there is something that we, as heirs of salvation, must more greatly grasp of this magnificent reality that defines our relationship to God Almighty. So the author goes to great lengths to ensure that Christians, disciples, know what it is to live by grace. Because by knowing how great God's amazing grace offers salvation to us, it tells us how salvation by grace transforms the world through us. Understand how we are saved by grace requires us to understand what we have been saved from. And the author begins this chapter explaining from where we were adopted. We were, all of us, living according to the passions of our flesh, following the course of this world. In other words, we were in sin. Now, there's three categories of sin, if you didn't know. One is original sin. This is the sin of Adam and Eve when they rebelled against God, putting enmity between God and humanity. My son is playing soccer this season. He learned the other day at practice what it means to play on a team sport. The coach had set aside 45 minutes of practice for scrimmage. But before the scrimmage, they were practicing drills. The coach showed them the drill of what they were going to be doing and told them, now, when you're not running the drill, stay away from the goals. That was the only rule. So while they were running these drills, one of the boys began shooting on the goal while waiting for his turn. The penalty was that everyone ran laps and did push-ups. 36 boys were doing what they were told. One boy's poor decision affected every other player. That's how original sin works. One decision by Adam and Eve caused all of humanity to reap the consequences of sin. Second category of sin is inherited sin. This is the sin that you get from your parents. Did you know that? That while your parents pass on physical DNA that gives you the understanding of your height, your hair color, your shoe size, all the other DNA, it's guided by what comes from your parents. Your parents' choices are also passed on to you, which is why it doesn't matter whether you are a biological child or an adopted child. You earn some of those ways of being. A few months ago, I was working with some wood on my driveway. Caleb and Madeline were tossing the frisbee back and forth in the front yard. One of the tosses sent the frisbee under the car. So as Caleb is inchworming himself under the car to reach the frisbee, he suddenly lifted his head up and clocked himself in the head. He said a word that I won't repeat. He came out from under the car, and I asked him, Caleb, where did you hear that word? He was quiet. He shrunk a little. So I asked him, did you hear Daddy say it? Nodded his head, yes. I told him that is not a good word to say. Let's neither of us say it again. He nodded again. And I'm quite confident that he has kept his promise. The third category of sin, moving right along, is personal sin. These are the things that we choose to do that we know are wrong. And all of us have made poor decisions for ourselves. And so the author of Ephesians tells us all of us once lived in the consequences, the death of our sin. As we heard Molly read the scripture text from Genesis, Adam and Eve were fooled by a play on words. God told them, and they believed God, that they would die if they ate of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The crafty serpent replied and asked them, and then stated, you will not die. And you know, the serpent was right. They didn't experience a physical death. They did, however, experience a spiritual death. When they ate of that fruit, when they reached after it, seeking it for themselves, they realized after that they had broken the relationship with God. They broke that complete trust by reaching for something other than God. In the Hebrews Bible study I've been leading, I asked them several weeks ago, months ago actually now, what is the opposite of faith? And we discovered together the opposite of faith is idolatry. When you reach for something other than God. you are seeking to worship something else besides God. And that's exactly what Adam and Eve did. They reached for something else. And that is our existence too, before God's grace. We have received God's grace because God is rich in mercy. That's it. That's the reason we have received God's grace. It is not something that we have done. We have been made alive in Christ because of God. Now, the word alive is not the opposite of death, like the serpent spoke. The death we experience, the death Adam and Eve experienced, is the separation, the broken relationship, a removal from communion with God. So to be alive is to have that relationship restored. Through God's rich mercy, relationship was made possible and given to humanity because of Christ's saving work. So when the author of the letter to the church at Ephesus talks about grace, we hear how everything is new because of God's grace. The sun appears in the east every morning. That is a gift of grace. The earth rotates on its axis that is kept at an average of 23.5 degrees because of grace. The air we breathe comes from God's grace. The reason we know love is a matter of grace. The reason we have a relationship with God is because of unmerited, unearned, unachievable grace. None of us can stand before God on our own strength, by our own merit, or on our own moral character. We are flawed by our own sin. But God, who is rich in mercy, makes us whole. God is the one who erases our sin, our trespasses, our debts. It is not something that we have done or could do. A mother, we will call her Robin, shared a story with me that explains grace well. Her daughter asked her one day, "Mommy, is it true that if you've done something bad, and you say you're sorry and you mean it, that it can be okay again?" Robin, now a little concerned for what she is about to hear, replied, "Yes, my darling, absolutely. If you are sincere when you say you're sorry, it can be okay." So her daughter proceeded to tell Robin that on her favorite sofa, an antique passed down from Robin's grandmother, the daughter had gotten angry and written with her crayons, "Stupid mommy," across the bottom of those cushions. Robin told her daughter, "That sofa is very special to me. But you told me. I hear you say you're sorry, and I see how sad you are about what you did. It can be okay." So Robin got some rags, some soap, and a bucket, and she filled the bucket with some warm water, and she brought the daughter with her. And the mother took out the rag, got the soap, and began to gently scrub the sofa cushions with her daughter beside her, to remove the waxy crayon residue, to restore the sofa as it should be. This is a story of grace. This is not a parenting 101 story. This is a story of grace. See, God treats us like this. God's grace cleans us to be made new, fully restored to how we should be. There is great joy in being fully restored. But if I'm speaking for myself and I'm completely honest, there is a little discomfort too. Because I took no part in making it right. See, we have disillusioned ourselves into thinking that we are self-made people. We are not self-made people. Everything that we are, everything that we have is a gift of God's grace. We have not earned it. We cannot pay the debt. We cannot eradicate the offense. We are saved by grace. What was broken has been made whole. That which was owed has been paid. Relationship with God and one another is restored and made new. All of it by God, who is rich in mercy. And that brings us to how the world is affected by God's grace through us. We were saved by grace, and that is a gift. We are saved by grace that we did not earn, nor could we labor for it, no matter how much we labored. But while we are saved by grace, it's there in verse 10. We are created in Christ Jesus for good works. Because we are saved by grace, we as persons who have experienced grace are to interact with others so they too may experience grace. Or as Eugene Peterson's rendering in the Message tells us, this is the work we had better be doing. And that may look like scrubbing waxy crayon from the bottom of a cushion of an antique sofa that somebody else marked up. We are saved by grace. I wonder how you will extend the grace of God to another. Let us pray. Gracious God, for so many times, so many ways, grace makes little sense to us. We struggle to believe that you would welcome us, uplift us, restore us freely. But this amazing grace of yours, Jesus, is a remarkable thing. Liberating, renewing, transforming. You raise up the least. You surprise the great, creating a relationship where none had been. May your life-giving grace be evident in our interactions with others. Amen. As you are able, I invite you to please stand as we sing together, Rock the Victory.